Hello, Ad Age audience. I'm Garett Sloane, technology reporter, here for Ad Age next streaming event. And I'm going to be your host for the next couple of panels. And this latest one, the next one up, is our AVOD landscape, the ad video on demand landscape. So we're going to be talking with Roku, Pluto, Tubi to discuss the shape of OTT and the marketplace for brands. So I'm going to bring on our panel now, starting with Ashley Hovey, Director of AVOD Growth at Roku, Harold Morgenstern, Senior VP, Head of National Sales at Pluto TV, and Mark Rotblatt, Chief Revenue Officer at Tubi. So welcome all three of my guests.
Hey, Garett.
Good to see everybody.
Good to see you too. Thanks again for doing it. And yeah, like I set it up, I just wanted to get into the AVOD landscape. It's right there on the start of the panel. I was hoping to just start with Pluto and Tubi first to talk about how you're now owned by these traditional media companies. So I wanted to hear how that sort of affects what you're doing in the just space right now. So let's start with Harold, I suppose. No, not playing favorites, but.
Got it. No problem. All partners here. So, how does Pluto's ownership, by Viacom affect us, I guess, Garett, going to market now, being, owned by this huge global media conglomerate. We all know the media landscape is very challenging. Clients have to find the right choices to where they place their media dollars to effectively increase their sales and or market share. We look at it at a very simplistic basis. Our job is to bring clients incremental reach. And we actually partner with Viacom and CBS to encourage clients to continue spending on traditional TV, but then use a nice overlay where they can reach those cord cutters, those cord nevers. We know that our audience is roughly 50 some odd % of non-traditional pay users. So we offer the ability for clients to reach consumers that they would not normally get in traditional television. So having the ownership of CBS affords us obviously the ability to offer huge incremental reach to clients that have been historically just buying traditional, but then it offers us obviously the deep pockets and resources for marketing, research, production, and we're all out there basically using that ownership to bring, accelerate our capabilities effectively and efficiently on behalf of our clients. So it's been great for Pluto to be part of the Viacom CBS family.
And Tubi is owned by Fox. So, what I was trying to see if you all were just feeling that, you can't sort of tell the corporate parent TV's the last generation, you're the new generation. Is that the way Tubi feels?
Well, no, I mean, look, Fox Corporation is a smart, while being a large media organization, we recognize this shift to streaming. And this shift it's been happening, it's been accelerating, and it's going to continue to happen over a period of time. And so it is an investment in maybe the future pipes of how things are consumed, but it doesn't change what people are consuming per se. I mean, I think so. We were acquired in March of this year, and what Fox saw in Tubi is it's on the television, it's movies and TV shows, and now live news. So the content is a match. Advertisers, they know the benefits of advertising in this medium, and in fact, there are new and better benefits in streaming as well. And so it's about being a pillar. Fox has Fox Entertainment with the number one show on entertainment, Fox Sports, Fox News, and Tubi is a pillar as part of that in streaming. And so as advertisers, as clients come to want to reach audiences, they want to reach them wherever they may be. And so we become a pillar of that. So I think that it's a great fit.
And Ashley, you're at Roku. You have to you work with all these new channels and the old channels. How is it shaping up on Roku in terms of how you're working with the older traditional TV, and now you're dealing with the newcomers like Tubi and Pluto?
Yeah, I mean, we are obviously a platform. We're here to help make our partners successful. I think we see that with all of these large media companies. Disney Plus is a really great example that's leaned in with us and has used a lot of the tools that we have on the platform to be successful. They hit their 5-year streaming goal in under a year very quickly, and we continue to be a place where they can monetize Hamilton and Mulan, for example. We see that obviously with our great partnership with NBC, and we also obviously work with both Tubi and Pluto to help them grow audiences. We just recently reached and announced 46 million active accounts this past quarter. So we're continuing to grow, and we also obviously have our own AVOD service, the Roku channel, which hit 54 million people this past quarter. So we're continuing to grow and helping our partners grow as well.
Yeah, what are you doing with the Roku channel? Explain that a little bit. It's a channel that's within the Roku platform, so you can go, it's free, but it's ad supported.
That's correct. It actually has got over 100,000 movies and TV shows now. It also has a premium subscriptions product, so a channels business in it as well. But we have a very strong linear business, fast channel business, if you will. We have a great kids and family presence there, and then of course, the bread and butter, which is the movies and TVs. And I think the reason that we've been successful with inside of the Roku channel is really about driving incremental monetization for our content partners and being able to drive discovery for users, right? Users want really an easy way to access great content. They want free content. They want more and more and more free content. And so we're really being able to be successful in getting users the content they want in the format they want, when they want it, and being able to drive, again, incremental dollars into the content partners that are trying to reach that audience.
And Pluto had 36 million subscribers, I think I saw in the latest numbers, which is just growth in that area and double the ad revenue. How is just doubling ad revenue? Is that because more people, not just because people are streaming more, but we're just seeing this shift accelerate because of, like everyone talks about, the pandemic and people at home? Is that what fuels it, or what? How do you see double growth?
Yeah, let me say, one of our culture for us, first and foremost, is all about being 100% transparent. And, we take a second just to unbundle that 36 million MAUs, which creates enormous scale and clients looking to follow that audience, which obviously equates to, the ad revenue. Just last week, Bob Ackish announced, our third quarter earnings that we did have 36 million MAUs, of which, 28.4 million were domestic, 7.6 million were international. And these numbers are going to continue to grow, and that scale is going to continue to escalate throughout the marketplace. And clients obviously are looking to follow. The reality is for us, we haven't deviated from our growth. We set plans in place last year, looking into 20, where we would be. We're seeing continued great momentum moving forward. And third quarter, we saw, astronomical growth on the revenue front. I mean, I'd be remiss. Mostly all of us probably saw the same scenario. Political certainly helped. We may see another big boost of political spending with the Georgia Senate coming up. That's something unique and different for all the platforms. But CPGs were extremely healthy and spending through the pandemic. We saw some reallocation of sports. And interesting, though, we actually saw clients that were original Olympic sponsors. With the Olympics being moved to 21, we saw clients that had planned heavily in the third quarter, and they needed to find, Garett, a place in order to fulfill those impressions. And, OTT and Pluto was right there to offer that for them. So, we had a great third quarter, and we're looking forward to that continued success moving into fourth quarter as well.
And Mark, with Tubi, I was going to try and ask everyone about the upfront market or the digital new front markets and how advertisers are trying to spend their money these days. How are you shaping the kinds of deals that Tubi can do with brands? And are they looking for sort of streaming as that flexible alternative, or what is it? How are those sort of negotiations going this year, particularly?
Yeah, this was an unprecedented year for many reasons. Typically the upfronts is a marketplace over a period of a few weeks, and it's really a rate of change business. How much did we spend with you last year? What was the rate? Are we going to spend X percent more? Which, X percent more on the rates, up or down, those types of things is the typical operation. But this year with the pandemic, you had, a lot of uncertainty, and it was different levels of uncertainty for different businesses. If you're a travel business, it was, much worse than maybe an entertainment streaming business, as an example. And so things took longer. I think that it really came up until the very end. But there was a couple of things. One is, Tubi came to the table as one of the pillars of the Fox portfolio. Clients wanted to see flexibility because of the uncertainties that we faced and that we may continue to face over the next, months and year. And so streaming represents something that was a step function change. In addition to the fact there was uncertainty around production of some of the shows, Fox, we're very fortunate that we were able to announce our fall lineup with little disruption, and then announce just what would be coming in January. Sports was uncertain, but a lot of it's being held. So all of that stuff, mix it in a pot, and you have an upfront where there was big shifts and shifts into streaming, as there was the recognition that audiences were going there, and new measurement and targeting can be applied.
Now, Ashley, you had mentioned some of the premium sort of properties, like movies, like Mulan, or things going straight to video. How is that market? We don't see movie theaters, obviously aren't packed these days. Is Roku doing more in terms of getting sort of that premium, those premium movies and films? How is that part of the Roku future?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I don't spend all my time focusing on it, but I will give you kind of a high level point of view. I think that one of the things we're seeing, which is about, right, which is all of the movie theaters going down, right, people not wanting to be in closed door spaces, and content partners being able to bring that content out earlier onto a platform like Roku, and be able to monetize it and get it out to users the way they want to. So we are working with partners who want to do that and want to reach the 46 million active accounts that we have. And so we try to enable partners as best we can to make sure that they're successful on our platform as part of that strategy. The Roku channel doesn't currently engage in anything transactional at this time.
The movies aren't as ad supported as some of the other sort of shows and channels that you do have on the platform.
Yeah, most of that is kind of within it, right? Is all transactional. It's all going to be a pay to view type viewing experience, with the exceptions of you've already subscribed to a service and then you're getting access to a film. Variety of what's been moving in that front is all transactional VOD.
How about that with I was going to ask Roku about your upfront market and the new fronts, and just sort of talking with advertisers. You do have, how does Roku fit into that platform? Because there's so many premium channels on the platform. They're selling, you're selling what you have. How do you divvy it all up?
Yeah, we actually just had our first new front this year, which was really exciting. And to Mark's point earlier, we also did have the 6 major agency holding companies, re-up significantly. So it is, obviously it's a little bit of the past, but it's something that we care about pretty deeply. And one of the things we rolled out at the new fronts is what we call the Agile Investment Plan, right? So it's really around just value control and agility for these partners, and how do advertisers be able to use first-party data, right? How do they have more control over their buys and that large audience that we have access to across the apps, right? So it's not only that they're buying inside of the Roku channel, but they also can provide obviously the entire platform. And so we've seen really, really good success this year, like I mentioned, right? Being able to sign all of the large holding companies. But the other thing that's been helpful there is that we launched OneView. So we actually finished our acquisition of DataZoo a year ago on Sunday, and we rolled out a platform where you can buy not only Roku media on the platform, but your entire spend across OTT and other places. So that's also been really helping drive advertisers to be able to reach the audiences that they want and continue these larger conversations with Roku about how do we reach audiences now that they're cutting the cord, now that AVOD is a larger part of this, right? Now that streaming is a thing that, you know, people have multiple services, how do we get to them? And we're able to help drive that conversation with them.
Sure. And Harold, you can have Pluto on any sort of device. It could be on the smart TV. It could be on Roku. It could be wherever it may appear. How are you telling advertisers about how to think of that sort of fracturing in the landscape? Is there any way for them to get their hands around it and really understand where their media is showing up and how you're able to sort of communicate that?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Pluto historically, you know, we want to be everywhere. So, you know, we go out and we tell the story, you know, we're on every single branded major television. We're on all of the major streaming platforms. Roku's a big partner. Amazon's a big partner. So we want to make sure that we have full coverage and we're spread a very wide net in terms of offering viewers that are out there that want to experiment, try, consistently use OTT and CTV streaming, that Pluto is out there. So we go out and we talk to clients about the mass scale. But then what we do is we really cull it down to, okay, what are their specific KPIs? What are they looking to do? Are they looking for incremental reach? Are they looking for brand awareness? Are they looking to be very specific with measurement and geo-targeting? So we bring it inside, we analyze everything that we have, and then we come back with the right product for them and the right media plan. And just in terms of like some innovative new ad product, we recently came to market with IQ, and we went to the market and we told the story holistically across all Viacom CBS Digital, not just Pluto, but where clients can come in, they can buy premium digital video across all of the Viacom digital entities, Viacom, CBS, and Pluto. They get a very efficient price for that flexibility. And then we go in and we position, you know, their inventory where we see we're going to reach their right audience for them. And that's one of the new innovative things that we've gone to. So we cast a very wide net, but then internally we use all the technology and measurement to cull it down to make sure we exceed on all their KPIs.
And now with Tubi, the sort of experience on that has been on-demand video a lot. But we were going to ask about how live video is shaping up. News, and I think Pluto does more of that, and Roku does news too. But how is live video? I say news, I sort of equate it with live because I figure that's where people are going to capture that sort of real-time information. But is live viewing a key component of where Tubi's going?
It's a new component, and you know, we've been a pure play video on demand movies and TV shows for many years, with over 26,000 titles, 70,000 hours of content, and we very much believe in the VOD model. We believe in personalization, but we were hearing from our customers that, you know, if you only had live news, I would spend all my time with you. And we were hearing that more and more, that was a key component to behaviors that we were not capturing. And so we launched live news for the first time in October. Our focus is really on having the best local news experience. We have 25 different channels at launch, and many more coming. And we think we can do something very special and unique in that space. And in the future, we'll likely be getting into additional types of content in the live streaming side.
And Ashley, so what's happening in the year ahead? Just Roku's always in the mix. We got 2021 coming up. What do you see in terms of where you're content is going to be on the platform and what advertisers are going to be looking for in the year ahead? Are there new ad formats? Is there new sort of just innovations that you're thinking about right now before we change the new year?
Yeah, we're always that's what we do, right? We're here to innovate. We're here to push the mold and continue being the number one in streaming. But I'm not allowed to give any forward-looking statements, but I will tell you in terms of inside of the Roku channel, right, we've seen really great success on live. It's one of those things where people were cutting the cord and they were looking for something familiar, and we launched an EPG guide, and people just an electronic programming guide, basically a guide. And people love it, right? They love lean back, they love comfortable, and they just want to be able to access two types of viewing. One is this, what you mentioned, live kind of community-based viewing, and other is just this lean back, sit back entertainment. I want it on, I don't want to have to think. And so that's going to continue to grow. I think that's going to grow with in our channel, it's going to grow in our partners' channels. And then again, people wanting things like the movie on Friday and the cartoons on the mornings, right? Those are going to be things that we're going to continue leaning into to be able to deliver on what the users are asking us for.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about also looking back. Just Roku had said that we're going back to sort of pre-COVID levels of viewing on streaming, I think. What does that mean in terms of what it looks like? That's just a return to normalcy and levels of just streaming that aren't quite as high as they were mid-pandemic, or how do you view the audience right now?
Yeah, I mean, we saw pretty aggressive spikes. Obviously, I think everyone saw them when everything in the whole world closed. I think everyone in streaming saw a really large spikes. But we actually just released in Q3, we saw an increase of 2 billion hours of hours streamed. So we're definitely still seeing growth. We saw our revenue go up, obviously, 78% quarter to the past quarter. So we're definitely still seeing that growth. It's really hard to say, right? Is there going to be another shutdown? Is this really just the move over to streaming full time, right? I think there's a lot of that, which is just that this is accelerated cord cutting, and AVOD is helping drive the way because it is it is able to replace a lot of the TV viewing people were doing originally. So I think it's really, it's hard to say what the trend is going to be, but we just want to obviously bring the best user experience we can moving forward. If people are going to be home and watching more and more TV, we're going to support them with the content they want to watch.
And Harold, with Pluto, how about your year ahead predictions? Anything you're seeing changing in the landscape that you think is worth noting right now?
I mean, look, it's pretty straightforward, right? We're seeing a mobile society that's, moving to a stationary society right now. And, obviously that was accelerated by the global pandemic, and hopefully that'll all be behind us. But, we're true believers from day one that this monumental shift from traditional linear to OTT streaming is going to continue through well into 2021 and beyond. We saw unprecedented numbers of folks that, went, experimented, and are consistently using OTT streaming. And we're, all in on, whether it's, AVOD or, SVOD with, Paramount Plus, all under the Viacom CBS umbrella. We're all in that paid streaming is going to continue moving forward into 2021. And that's really, truly the best trend that we see. It's not going to slow down anytime soon.
That's right. And with Tubi, just to sort of tie a bow on it. So what's for you in the future? I mean, for all of you, there's tons of just competition. There's in this ad-supported video on-demand space. We got HBO could have a sort of channel. Peacock's got its channel. Everyone's got their channel. How does Tubi sort of see itself going head-to-head with just big companies like that?
Yeah, and you mentioned, there was a mention of fragmentation and so forth. I think as advertisers and buyers really go 2 feet in, as they have in this upfront cycle, they're going to recognize that there's really only a few places that have the scale and the reach. There's actually more ways to buy than there are places to buy. And so I think people will start to zero in on the performance of that, the frequency and the frequency management. And that's why we launched our advanced frequency management tool so that buyers can get optimal reach on our property. So I think that's something that we're going to see more of. When you look at the ratings by consumers on all the app stores, whether it's Roku or iOS or Android, some of these new entrants are struggling because they don't have the infrastructure to actually deliver the delight to customers the way that Tubi can at 4.7 rating, 4.6 rating versus sub threes on some of these new entrants.
Well, I'm very grateful to all of you for appearing with me today and joining our conference. So thank you again for doing it.
Great.
Thanks, Garett. Have a good one.
Thanks, Garett.
Bye, guys.
Talk again. Well, that was our state of AVOD and the AVOD landscape. So again, thanks to our panel. I'm Garett Sloane, technology reporter at Ad Age. And I'm about to introduce another panel, and this one is about the state of addressable TV. So we're going to look a little more at the back end, the technology that powers this whole industry. And we're talking about how the CTV ecosystem is just creating new paths for advertisers to reach audiences. And it's such a fragmented space. So it is a difficult road, but these next panelists are a group of fine people who know the road ahead. So I'm going to introduce them right now. Where there's Dave Antonelli, Director of Sling TV and Ad Strategy and Revenue from Dish Media, Andrew Matero, VP of Platform Sales at Ampersand, and Samantha Rose, Senior VP of Advanced TV and Video Solutions at Horizon Media. So welcome to the panel, everyone.
Thank you, Garett.
Hi.
Good to see you all again. So yeah, we just had a good talk with Roku, Tubi, and Pluto, and I guess I set it up where we're going to be able to talk a little more about this, where it, can get a little confusing for a guy like me too. I'm not as comfortable with the terminology that I know you all are. So I was going to start with Samantha, who is able to explain you can explain the landscape right now, I think, pretty clearly. I was going to ask you, what are some of the differences between things like an MVPD and linear OTT, and why are those like important terms to know?
Sure. Thank you. Hopefully I can explain it. So when we talk about addressable, when we say addressable, that's really, that covers everything. That's addressable TV and OTT and digital and everything that falls in there. But when we're talking about addressable TV, we really are talking about MVPD and vMVPD addressable solutions where you're able to insert in live linear programming. Currently, everybody knows that to be the local avails, if you will, and they're developing solutions in national avails. But when we really think about it, that the vMVPDs, the dishes, the slings and Hulu Live and YouTube TV, it's a very similar consumer experience. It's exact same consumer experience as a regular MVPD. It's multi-channel services. So we think of those two things essentially as the same.
Okay. That was a very fine breakdown. And so Dave, I was going to ask you about how we look at things like, say, deterministic versus probabilistic, because that was an area that you could explain how it sort of the targeting we want to be able to do has to be very efficient on OTT because it is a fragmented landscape. You don't know where you're buying, and we need the best data to sort of target ads in this environment. So how do you look at those two sort of tracks and who's doing that right now?
Yeah, we think that that's a really important distinction. Deterministic data, it really comes down to tying, first party data to an account. So for sure who the person is that you want to target, and it's tied to opt-in data. The second type is probabilistic, and this is more of an extrapolation. So, and this is widely done. It's something that it depends on the data set that you're using, but it's generally using an IP address or some other data point to then link other data to that user. So we call it probabilistic because it's a probability that it's going to be that person, but it's not quite as tightly tied to that unique user.
Why is there that distinction? Where is it that you're not able to get as quality deterministic data? If you're a logged in user, of course you have that, because then you're sort of the consumer on the other end that which sort of platforms are doing the probabilistic where you're not as sure and it's a little hit or miss.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak for our perspective on that. Sling, for example, is in our portfolio, as is Dish. They both have subscribers that are, giving us permission to sort of know a bit about them, and that is explicitly how we have that data. I would say that more of the free content that maybe doesn't have a login or opt-in process would be more on that probabilistic side, and it really just depends on the quality of content and other things that that warrant a user wanting to pay for that content and or give you that data that is used for targeting.
And Andrew, and then at Ampersand, you're sort of hovering above it all and trying to sort of bring the industry together where you're able to sort of see across platforms. Is that right? How do you view the addressable marketplace?
Yeah, so you could kind of guess it by the name, right? Ampersand. The whole goal of what we try to do is unify the landscape. We've been doing it on the local targeted TV and streaming TV side for 30 plus years on a market by market basis, right? On the addressable landscape, we represent, and we're also owned by Comcast, Spectrum, and Cox. For addressable, we've also not only represent those three, but we've added in Verizon Fios into the mix as well. That total brings us to about 2/3 of the addressable landscape. As Samantha and others can tell you, addressable historically has not been easy. If you work with each individual MVPD, everyone operates in a different manner. The whole goal of Ampersand is to unify it and make it for a better client experience for everyone.
Right, and that introduced me to the term unified addressability. And what are we talking about there? Why is unified addressability? And maybe I could ask Samantha again on that. Why is that an important sort of goal, unified addressability?
Sure. I think, like Andrew was just mentioning, it's a landscape that has been around for a while. Addressable's been around, but there's a lot of different new processes and new data and technology that's available. And it is hard to maneuver through that from on the buy side. So it's important that we kind of have consistency, but also when we're talking about honing in on a more strategic target and a more narrow audience, and we're not, looking at buying just the broad demographic, we're gonna drill down to a much smaller audience. So when you do that and you're looking within each vendor's footprint, we're no longer talking about huge, massive audience numbers. We're drilling down many times to only a few million people within each vendor's footprint. So it's important that we can look at that consistently across the landscape and then aggregate it up together so that we can really get some scale.
Are you able to, just drilling down into the audiences, the more targeted you get with the types of ads, the fewer people there are to reach with those ads, I suppose.
That's right. I mean, if we're talking about many times, we're talking about people in the market for a certain car, or people in the market for a new car in general, or we're looking at cat owners, something like that, we're going to get down to a much smaller audience size. I think, one of the other things that we like about addressable that's kind of been a hot button this year is being able to use the addressable technology and capabilities to not just focus in on that kind of narrow strategic target, but also look at it maybe to broaden our reach extension and use it for reach extension capabilities. So, we might have an advertiser who really is still looking to go for mass and looking to buy, against a broader demographic, but we can use what's available from our partners, Dish, Ampersand, and Xandr, and so on, to use the capabilities and look at past linear buys or upcoming linear buys and build frequency against that late TV viewer. So there's kind of the ways to addressable now is twofold.
Mm-hmm. And Dave, at Sling TV, I was going to actually ask about your what you're seeing with the cord cutter experience. You saw subscriber growth last quarter. So more people are getting into Sling TV. I feel like that bucks a trend, or is it not? This is where the market is now.
Yeah, no, we've definitely seen some very strong viewership. That's absolutely right. We see linear holding strong. We're also, Dish Media also encompasses Dish, which is more on the satellite side of the TV landscape. So, and we're seeing strong viewership across the board. We see the two as really complementary because they're two different audiences, and people don't have accounts to both of those different entities. They usually almost all of the time just choose one. And that's why our perspective is that the whole industry is going to move towards this omni-channel approach. So Sam mentioned that just a second ago. It's hard as a buyer to figure out how to cobble together all these different pieces across the landscape. So it's our view that the way to help in that endeavor is to be transparent, to be open, interoperable, and sort of be part of that wave of as Ampersand and many of our colleagues in the industry really help to help drive that scale that Sam was also mentioning. So those are some of the reasons why we think that it's incremental to have CTV, but it's also just a piece of the overall picture.
Yeah, Andrew, I was going to ask about that too. It's like people are saying, incremental. There's only a sliver of the audience that's addressable. How do we grow that pie of what is addressable and what we consider part of that, buying experience?
Yeah, so unification obviously is key, right? To Samantha's point earlier, being able to work in the same process, same audience across the board, depending on MVPD. We can unify, bring it to about 42 million in our landscape right now, addressable TV households, both on a linear and VOD and streaming TV perspective. To Sam's point earlier, addressable historically has been utilized as a strategic audience, heavy up of frequency, et cetera, right? The ability to actually take in national ad exposure data, be able to utilize that for targeting has been really key in our work over the past year. To bring in that incremental reach as a complement to national campaigns.
What is that bringing the incremental to national? I was going to ask about how much of the reach on this is incremental versus why can't it all just be addressable? Do advertisers ask that question?
Yeah, absolutely. So over the last few months, we've actually launched something that we call the AND platform. The AND platform is a buy-side UI, the first to encompass planning, buying, and measurement all within one user interface. We operate capabilities on not only a local perspective, but a national addressable perspective, right? And the pillars of the AND platform allow a user, a partner, to measure a national campaign, identify true reach and frequency based on our ad exposure of those 40 million households, identify, hey, I missed 30% of my desired audience in a national campaign. With that 30%, I can target them from an addressable standpoint or a targeted TV standpoint, filling in the gaps from a market perspective or a network ranker perspective. That unification and that incremental reach capability really brings it all together in our perspective.
And Samantha, I hate to keep going back to you with the technical questions, but I was going to ask you about Project Or, like these sort of industry solutions. And I think we've talked about that sort of, what is that? What are sort of the industry groups working on to make this all intelligible?
Sure. So, Project OR specifically is the mission is to set out to do a lot of this unification. So, like I mentioned, when historical addressable was really about the local time, the 2 minutes of local time and inserting ads there, and Project OR partnering with a lot of the marketplaces in addition to Nielsen and a few others are trying to figure out how to make the rest of the time, the national commercial time, addressably capable. So we know there are a lot of different partners working out there trying to figure that out. And I think, there's been a lot more collaboration in the past year than I've ever seen before. And that's with the programs themselves, the TV networks, the MVPDs, and people, measurement solutions like Project Or and Nielsen, who are really trying to come together to figure out how to make it work, but then also how to measure it. So I think it's a really interesting time. It's much more complicated than I think everybody thought. So, you know, there are solutions that are in the marketplace now and will be moving forward that are trying to beta test to just make sure that the tech works. And then how do we measure that? Because historically C3 was a fully national rating. So how do we remove those addressable impressions from that C3 rating and make sure that both the addressable campaign is being measured correctly and what's left over in the national C3 rating is being measured correctly?
Yeah, I get a lot of messages to my inbox about how companies coming up with new ways to measure CTV. Everyone seems to have a solution. Is there a magic to measuring CTV? I guess maybe Ampersand would know that best. What's the difficulty in measuring this stuff?
Sure. So CTV is extremely difficult to measure. We utilize the actual ad exposure that we have at our fingertips in our households, our 40 million households. Comcast, Spectrum, and Cox work with us on an ad exposure basis to actually identify the household name and address file, as well as every single ad that they were exposed to, obviously in a privacy compliant manner. The ability to look at those campaigns is extremely tough. CTV capabilities flow through different pipes and different channels. To Dave's point earlier, there are differences in probabilistic versus deterministic. There are also concerns of scale. To Sam's point earlier, when you drill down on a CTV perspective with limited scale, your sample size starts to diminish pretty rapidly. And that's where we believe the 40 million households from a MVPD standpoint is pretty key in bringing it all together.
Right. And Dave, any thoughts on that from your end? How is your side of the industry fitting into this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that absolutely you have to find that balance between scale and the right data. I think you asked the question earlier about, is there a magic bullet for measurement? And I think that a lot of different companies are working on that right now. I think the key to folks that have the data, like a Dish Media with, all of our opt-in user data and viewership data, et cetera, is sort of how do we use that data to be part of these holistic initiatives that are taking place so that we can actually help measure better, because we have data that's really valuable and telling, but keeping it in a silo or being a walled garden doesn't really help anybody. So I think that's a key thing for us is just making sure that we have the data and we're using it to help this overall initiative to balance that scale that you need by working across the industry.
Yeah, with the last panel, we were discussing how there was some optimism that there won't be as many walled gardens as you see in other digital spaces, where you see the Facebooks and Googles and Amazons building their walled gardens. Is there a reason why CTV or just this way this landscape is shaping up? Is there any reason why it wouldn't be the same trajectory we saw in digital? Are you seeing the industry work in more cooperative ways? And I'll throw that to anyone. Samantha.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think there's something about the history of the TV networks and this area where we've collaborated, and I think everybody's end goal is to have an advertising experience that's both good for the advertisers and the consumers. And I think everyone would agree that we want to collaborate together to do that. So that's just my perspective.
Sure.
Yeah,
and Andrew, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea of sharing this data is, in my opinion, to their benefit, right? The CTV data, the walled gardens, et cetera. This idea of total TV reach, frequency, performance is something that I hear all the time. The ability to look at not only TV from a linear perspective, from a VOD perspective, from a streaming perspective, but really all inclusive of every single capability on a media standpoint that an advertiser runs through. Measuring it all, tying it all together is extremely important and very key to putting together true plans of true reach and frequency. So that idea of kind of opening up that data, and there are providers, ACR and smart TV providers that we license and work with as well to bring it all together, And we'll continue working with those partners and streaming TV partners and CTV partners to bring it all together in-house.
And I would echo that as well. I think that the fact that there are technology partners out there that can be a link between these different data sets, and there is, from the agency side, the holding company side, the client side, a desire to get us to all play well together in the sandbox. I think people know now things that they didn't know. As Sam said, at the advent of the internet, people, maybe allowed things to progress to a point beyond which they would at this point in time because of what we know now about how that creates these difficulties. So I think we're still in the early phases of advanced TV, certainly OTT, and I think we're in a good position now to prevent some of these things from happening.
Yeah, and Samantha, when you're on the ground with the brands, just walking them through, as we've just been discussing, it's all very complex. What are they just telling you when you sit down with them? What types of brands are sort of coming into the fold to realizing the power of this sort of medium? And then what are the pain points that they're telling you?
I think for the most part, all of our brands are tapping into CTV inventory in some capacity. Going back several years, like CTV time spent was a much smaller piece of the pie, and now it's significant. And it hasn't surpassed time spent with linear television, but it's not so far away, and it's not too far in the future that we think it will. So I think most of our advertisers at least are tapping into CTV as a replacement for lost just TV demo GRPs. And what we see now is kind of the evolution of that, of tapping into CTV for the capabilities that we have of being more targeting more narrow. So we see a lot of advertisers buying CTV kind of similar to how we have bought television, kind of content buying and guaranteeing on a demo. And we're a lot more now traction with also layering on targetability and addressability to kind of complement our mass buys. And that's
isn't it all Dave, what is I feel like everything's going to be CTV at some point. Like if you're just turning on your TV now these days, it's all internet connected, and maybe sort of the channels you're getting there, they all just seem to be plugged in.
Yeah, I mean, we've been saying for a few years now that we think that the future of television is impression based. So we absolutely agree, and I think there are initiatives like the ones we've talked about that enable linear inventory to become addressable are going to move things in that direction. Onboarding inventory onto into the DSP tech stack, like we've done recently with some of our set-top box VOD inventory as well as addressable inventory. I mean, that's going to just make it. Those are the kind of things that are going to keep happening, and those are the kind of things that we are really pressing on because we think that that's really, we agree that's going to be the future. At some point in time.
And I'm gonna we're coming close. We're almost done. But before I let anyone go, is there any, just looking ahead the next year, what do you see? I'd like to ask all of you, starting with Samantha again. What's just coming up this future for the next year in CTV? Is there anything you're just seeing that must be on people's radars?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it, and I think you guys talked about it in the previous panel, but just time spent with CTV is growing at great clips and has been for a while, and especially this past year with the launch of some pretty major streaming services, HBO Max and Disney Plus and Peacock. What'll be interesting to see too is the different models that these guys have taken. Some of them have chosen to be completely ad free, like a Disney Plus, whereas Peacock has chosen to go the ad model. So it'll be really interesting to see what available inventory will exist, and then also what addressable inventory will exist. And I think it's just only going to obviously continue to be on the rise.
And Dave, any final thoughts from you on next year and what we're seeing?
I think things are going to get more and more programmatic across the board, and you have to be really set up to drive success programmatically. And that applies to traditional modes of delivering content, as well as things like OTT. So I think that evolution and the rise of programmatic is a huge trend that's going to continue.
Andrew, last word from you, and just where you're going to take Ampersand and the future.
Yeah. So first of all, I completely agree with everything Dave and Sam just said. I also would argue that we overcomplicate things a little bit, right? It's all TV at the end of the day. There's so much rich data out there to help you guide, plan, and buy that data and that media. The AMP platform brings it all together as well as any other. So I just advise anyone who's working in this industry to utilize the data at their fingertips.
And on that, thank you all again for doing this with us today, and hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. And that was one panel, and we're going to get into the next one soon. But before we do, I'm going to put out some shout outs to people in the audience right now, because we're getting them in. And we have Charlene from New York. Shout out to you. Abigail from North Carolina. Chris from Canada. Catherine from Spain. Devyani from India. Emily from Kenya. And Tony, Joe, Eva, Alice, Amanda, Javier, Shelby, Mira, and Kay, all shouting out to you out there. And thanks for watching. It's been a privilege to host you. And now I'm going to have up next is a word from our sponsor, LoopMe. And let's take a look at what's coming up later on Ad Age Next Streaming. Hi, Heidi.
Hi, Garett.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Sorry, I was having a little technical difficulty there for a second. Hold on one second. All right. How's the day going so far, Garett?
I think we had some successful panels just now, 2 in a row. So it was,
I think we did too. Just give me 2 seconds, Garett.
Yeah, take your time.
All right. You know what? Technology, Garett.
I know. We've all been through it.
Technology. Give me a little recap of the conversation you just had. What did you, as I'm just trying to pull something out, tell me what you...
I would love to. Yeah, no, we just talked about the addressable TV market with some fantastic guests from Ampersand, Dish Media, and Horizon Advanced Media. So we had a good look at the just landscape and what, how people are sort of buying ads on connected TV and targeting ads and all the complicated things that are associated with it. So it was very, if you're a nerd, it was a very nerdy conversation.
You know what? Or just an exceptional marketer, Garett. That's how it works.
Yes.
All right, I've got what I need, Garett. Thank you for hanging out with me while I had to pull up this document. You know what?
I wish I could.
What is a Tuesday without a little technical difficulty? It's good seeing you, Garett. I miss seeing you in the office. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to Ad Age Next Streaming. Thank you while I was dealing with this little technical hiccup. You're all very patient. I am Heidi Waldusky. I'm the associate publisher for Ad Age. Right now, you're joining me for a session called Outcomes-Based TV Advertising Reveals What Happens Next. Sounds pretty good, right? In today's conversation, we're going to be talking about how the race is on to reach the right consumer within the right context via TV. Linear, addressable, streaming connections, that's what we're talking about. But how does exposure to these ads impact attitudes and behaviors toward a brand? Well, luckily, we've got leaders from LoopMe, ITN, and Matterkind here on hand to explore what happens next, delving into whether an ad has increased online or offline sales, what actions increase purchase intent and consideration, and what data and measurement tools are available to help us close the loop. For today's conversation, I am joined by Elle Donner, the Senior Director of Corporate and Business Development for LoopMe, Peter Parisi, the Associate Director of Advanced TV for Matterkind, and Mike Hardy, the President of Sales for ITN. Elle, Peter, Mike, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. I'm glad we all found you again. I was a little worried for myself there. Elle, I want to start with you. And Peter and Mike, obviously, this is a casual conversation. This is really about, giving our audience the information they need to make the right decisions in this space. So feel free to jump in. But Elle, I want to start with you. So can you just set the stage for us on why outcomes-based TV is such an important tool for marketers right now? Why are we here talking about this today?
Yeah, so a couple of things. Historically, TV was measured simply by reach and frequency. Unfortunately, today, a lot of people are still just using those metrics to measure success. The questions clients and agencies used to ask were more about how many people am I reaching and how many times do I need to reach them to affect an action. But the core problem was that there was really no way to measure that last part, right? So what happens after they saw the ad? We know that sales and traffic go up with ad exposure, fact, but how much?
Right.
And so now we know, right? So there are data sets available to the advertising industry that help connect TV exposure to real life outcomes, such as brand awareness, website conversion, tune in, to name a few. But there's also companies that are applying ad tech to these data sets to help make changes in flight towards these outcomes. And of course, key to that would be a strong household graph. So GRP's impressions, it's no longer enough, right? Advertisers, quite frankly, should be mandating data and optimization for their TV budgets from all of their partners. At this point, the inventory is not so much the issue as understanding how to purchase that mix.
That's really good. So there's a really nice, just complete layer of information that we're seeing now, right? So I love what you were saying and I know this group is super smart about this topic. Like, it can't just be about I'm just reaching a lot of people, or I'm doing it at the times I need to do it. And there's a real layer of data and intelligence that we're talking about now. So for Peter, how is this, as we're going beyond this, as we're just getting smarter and it's not just about reach and frequency anymore, there's a lot of solutions on the table. How is this helping you partner with brands? What is this helping you bring to the table for them?
So going beyond just impressions and DRPs, it really helps us showcase to the brand how media is impacting their actual business. So we can leverage that to understand, okay, what audiences are we reaching, and then what actions are they taking, so we can actually show true business outcomes. And ultimately, this helps us partner with our brand teams and marketers in a way that wasn't typically possible in the past, where we were typically just media channel specialists and experts. That's what we did execute campaigns. Ultimately, when we're able to activate campaigns and get a readout on key business objectives such as awareness or purchase intent, actually driving someone to go see a doctor. These are true tangible things that we could showcase that the media had on a client's campaign and on their actual business. And ultimately, as TV becomes more advanced, our ability to measure these things and hopefully to measure them quicker is going to be evolve the channel and evolve the role the channel plays in media mix.
So brands must be pretty excited about this, I'm assuming, right? Like this all sounds really fantastic. Like, Mike, I want to bring you in. Are there any challenges to this approach? I want to obviously keep talking about the advantages of it, but are there any challenges for this right now? Maybe it's inventory or securing the right things. Can you give us some insight on that?
Yeah, sure. The ongoing challenge in the marketplace is going to continue to find ways to break through the walled gardens. They too often limit reach and strategy execution to specific silos. We all see today that audiences aren't going to settle down, right? So for years to come, they're going to be navigating a changing landscape of content opportunities and resources. So really, what is most important? Well, the ability to follow those consumers. And so Heidi, to your question on inventory, for that reason, when it comes to ITN specifically securing inventory, we've always made a strategic decision to maximize scale and diversity. We do not make revenue deals that require us to represent specific content, stations, or networks that we must then turn around and sell, because that would just make us a walled garden like everybody else. Instead, our aim during these changes is to remain fluid, to be a great aggregator by using technology and data applications such as this across the widest array of quality content providers.
So Al, let's take it back to you then, because tell me more about the benefits you're seeing from this approach. I mean, Mike and Peter are talking a lot about the various benefits. How are you seeing this play out for you?
Like in terms of for brands?
Yeah, in terms of brands, what makes you so excited, or when we talk about this list of benefits, what really, as we're looking to kind of educate the marketer, what in there excites you the most?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the fact that you no longer need to rely on just ratings and content in order to make decisions about where your TV advertising should be spent. You want to make those decisions based on what's going to drive an actual outcome. So it's not always going to be airing on the most premium show that everyone's talking about the next day. That might not be your target consumer just because it's got high ratings. So things like that to consider.
Right.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on Elle's point, I think it's really interesting because of the continued fragmentation we're seeing across the marketplace and the amount of content there is out there. The fact that we could leverage data to find the key audiences and find ways to serve them in areas that make sense to them, I think is really important and beneficial and exciting, because ultimately trying to get in front of your audience could have been more and more difficult, especially when we talk about very niche targets.
So Peter, I want to kind of follow up. Oh, Mike, did you have a follow up there as well?
No, what I like about this is that, right, there's still proven tactics and strategies that work in the marketplace, and we're not ignoring them, right? So we're taking those into account and making adjustments based on new opportunities and data that's available in the marketplace.
Okay. And so, Mike, I kind of want to follow up with you a little bit, and Peter and Al obviously jump in here. So, obviously this is a solution for multiple kinds of marketers, right? So maybe I have a little bit of a more advanced strategy that I can layer this in, or maybe I'm just starting out. Like, what do you think is this about this? What kind of creates the biggest aha moment for the marketer? And maybe it's someone who's maybe got a little bit more of a sophisticated strategy already in place, or maybe talk me through getting a new brand or getting a new marketer to adopt this kind of solution. Like, what's creating the biggest aha moment for them where they're like, yes, I've got to get this into my solution?
Well, I like taking personally the walk before you run approach to all this, right? So we have, right, I mentioned the proven strategy and tactics of the past and that we shouldn't ignore them. And when you look at ITN, our goal has always been to sell and guarantee audiences on outcomes across different screens. And what is interesting about this is the ability to, over time, collect the data, look at the data, and make adjustments to your schedules on a different quarter base, on every other quarter basis, or maybe get to the point of doing it on a monthly basis. So you, based on the data, you can adjust your strategy based on that as you go within flight.
Got it. Elle, what about you?
Yeah, I think it's really important to make sure that you understand what your KPIs are and what data you're using to get there. You're not, there's so many different data sources out there. It's about choosing the right one that's got your target in it. So it's not necessarily saying, I want to use a segment of specific soft drink shoppers in the last 12 months. It's saying, let's look more closely at what happened in the last 30 days and follow those trends to make optimizations moving forward. We're not basing it off of outdated data that we no longer have any value.
Right, because isn't it a little bit too I mean, there's just a lot of like, I mean, it's the old cliche, like analysis paralysis, right? Like there's so much data coming at brands and coming at marketers. It's like, well, how do I need to think about this data as compared to other data that I'm getting, the other sets that I have? How are you kind of, leading people through that? Is it just by saying like, this is just smarter data? I mean, I like the kind of, walk before you run approach there too. Mike, just kind of stepping through it. Are you able to do that in a way that helps translate the data in more effective ways?
Yeah, I think first party data is almost always going to be best if that's able to be shared. But there's also products out in the market, like for instance, we have something called audience intelligence, where we go out, we survey our DMP, and we provide people that are in market as of 2 weeks ago for whatever the product is. Let's say it's auto, CPG. We then use that as our targeting segment, right? Whether it be across linear TV, CTV, to help show that these people 2 weeks ago said they wanted to buy your product. Now is the time to hit them with your ads.
That's great. So you're moving just much faster in a way, obviously too. Like Peter, is there a speed there that obviously is incredibly beneficial, and how are you capitalizing on that?
Well, ultimately, one of the things I did want to say about like how do we know what data to pick and choose, right? We do think it's really important to take the time to be picking data that is aggregated in a way that's approved, that's adhered to any rules and regulations. So if you're thinking in the pharma space, you want to make sure you're touching data that is being pulled in a HIPAA compliant fashion, right? You want to make sure that you're using data that's in compliance with the CCPA rules that probably will eventually be rolled out across the whole country at some point over the next few years. In terms of speed, I mean, we always want to make sure we do have, in terms of like understanding who the audience is and the data we selected, right? There's definitely varying speeds of implementation. It's good to take some time to ensure that when you're activating these campaigns, you found all the audience that you want to go after, right? And that can take some time. But if you know the content that you want to go after, that could be a little bit quicker. And there's different data sources you could pull from to identify, okay, this is the content we want to activate against. If we can get into that as quick as the inventory could become available.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I think what I agree with what Peter just said. You want to be able to collect enough data to make strategic and informed decisions on your future buys or your current schedule, and that's going to really always vary depending on the size of your schedule too.
So I think that kind of goes back, to you, Mike. You've talked like this isn't a set it and forget it kind of thing. It's really important to kind of, I guess, really have the right partners in place to also help, execute these solutions in the right way. So I kind of want to leave our audience with like these 3 lessons, and Mike, since we're on you, we'll start with you. So if I'm a marketer, what are the 3 things I should be asking myself when it comes to like finding the right partner or thinking about this approach and where it fits in my tool and measurement toolbox, or my data measurement toolbox, not my tool and measurement toolbox, measurement toolbox.
So I think a key question is like, what do you have to sacrifice to pursue data-driven marketing? And I already said it already. I'd say it all the time. You can ask Elle when we're on meetings that I like the walk before we run approach to all this. So, right, I mentioned about the proven strategies of the past, unduplicated reach, effective frequency. We can't ignore those, but right, our goal at ITN is always to provide quality inventory. And if the data suggests that in a CTV environment, that if you're running at 3 a.m. with no insight or control to that content, right, you should have the ability to question that efficiency. And those are things that we have the ability to do. So if you can implement the data and help you be more effective to hit on the key points, that you should include it in your marketing strategy, really the walk before you run approach that I've been talking about.
I really love that. Peter, what about you? Like if you've kind of got, a couple things that you're really bullish on, what are you focusing on?
I think it's important for people to ask themselves, okay, who is my audience? Because that helps us then figure out, okay, what data sources do we want to go after? How are we gonna find this audience and get ads in front of them? And the other to think about is, what are the goals of the campaign? What objectives do I want to achieve? Because that helps us understand how are we going to enter the marketplace? How are we going to measure everything? And I like to say that it's important to maybe not think of every single channel in a traditional role. The roles of channels are evolving, and let the audience kind of act in a way that they're going to after exposure to the ad.
That's really great advice. Elle, I want to end on you. Give me what you got. What are our kind of main takeaways? What are you really focusing on, and what should people really be taking away from all of this?
Yeah, I mean, bottom line is incrementality and driving outcomes, right? We're no longer just measuring CPMs, doing transactional deals. We're really trying to help CMOs get to their bottom line by making sure that, Peter touched on it earlier, that we're using not just the right data, but the most recent data. And is that data available in flight? Can I use it to make changes before my last marketing dollar has been spent to make sure that I can optimize towards that KPI?
I really love that. Figuring out how to use my dollars before they're spent, not wondering what kind of happened to them after. That's all pretty fantastic stuff. Mike, Peter, Elle, thank you so much for being here. That was really fantastic information. Really appreciate the conversation, and thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to the rest of you for staying tuned in to Ad Age Next Streaming. We're going to be back shortly, but first, let's take a look at what's coming up next.
Hello. Thank you so much, Heidi. And thank you, everyone, for sticking with us. If you're enjoying our streaming conference, make sure to register for Ad Age's next virtual CMO conference, which will take place on December 8th. And we'll be bringing together executives from brands including Coca-Cola, Citi, and Frito-Lay, where we'll discuss topics ranging from in-house agencies and media planning to how best to structure internal teams to deal with the changing consumer environment. You can register at adage.com/nextcmo. So we're going to close out the day taking a look at how marketers are navigating the streaming landscape and what the shift to OTT will mean for advertising in 2021. And joining me, we have Jeff Hagan, Group Director of Connections Planning and Investment at the Coca-Cola Company, Sarah Johnson, VP and Group Director of Video Investments at Cara, and Charlie Chappell, Head of Media and Comms Planning at the Hershey Company. And I think Charlie, we might be waiting for to jump in. He's having a little bit of tech difficulties, but he will pop in and join us, I'm sure, when he's back up and running. But hi, Jeff. Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining me.
Afternoon.
Hello.
How are both of you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for asking.
Can't complain one bit. Happy to be here.
So we've spent most of the day today talking about all of the shifts into the streaming landscape and sort of the ways, marketers can participate, take advantage of the opportunities. Jeff, I want to start with you. Maybe you could speak a little specifically about how the Coca-Cola Company is really looking at the streaming landscape, where dollars are shifting to. How much of dollars are shifting from linear to streaming?
Yeah, so it's a great question because it's not like streaming is new, right? When you think about it, consumers have been doing it. It's not like Netflix just popped up in March. So when we've been looking at it and been making shifts, as the consumers making shifts over the last several years. So you've seen things like linear, our spend in linear go down. That's reported as it kind of goes in there. And you've seen this go more and more into places that connected TV, OTT, et cetera. In terms of a percent, it's kind of tough to give an exact one because it varies by brand, it varies by budget, but you could say that you're seeing probably double-digit growth easily in OTT, probably upwards of 20 to 30% as it's kind of gone into it, as we've kind of made those shifts.
How big of an impact has COVID had on your investment strategy?
Me again? You want me to? Okay. Yeah, it's been pretty large because for us, you have to remember half of our business actually comes from outside of like large stores, so grocery stores, et cetera. A lot of it comes from sporting events. A lot of it comes from QSRs and places that were impacted by it. So our media investment had to shift, and we had to be shifting to things like e-com a lot faster. And I think that's in line with a lot of CPGs as they've gone into it. So then you had to start exploring those platforms and accelerate how you would connect with consumers there. So you saw us pull back in some areas, and then you saw us accelerate it in places like OTT. You saw us accelerate in places where consumers were going to spend their time, as well as e-com and other places.
I definitely want to get back to the e-com conversation at some point. But Sarah, for your clients, what have you seen about the willingness and appetite to move more dollars into streaming?
Yeah, I mean, I think as I represent Kara here today, we definitely are seeing that shift across all of our clients, and we're educating them and pushing them in that direction because that's where the eyeballs are starting to go. And they have been, like Jeff said, for a few years now. I think the impact of COVID really validated, our reasoning behind that shift, because we are seeing that increase within streaming platforms as a direct implication to COVID. And we really think that's going to continue to grow over the next, however many years.
Sarah, what did this mean then for the upfronts this year? How much changes did we actually see in the upfront, buying process as marketers become more willing and open to moving dollars elsewhere?
Yeah, the upfront was definitely different this year. There definitely were those shifts in budgets. From an increased perspective, I think Jeff hit it on the nail on the head. We were seeing, similar increases and share shifts too within our media plans across our clients here at Kara. Listen, with the fragmentation in the marketplace, with linear ratings decreasing, we needed to make that shift, not only to best find our audience wherever they're consuming, but also too to help, with that reduction within the linear landscape, with that GRP pool shrinking. And pricings just keep going up and up, find those places within the streaming landscape and OTT specifically, where we can strike those advantageous deals and rates and get those good rates for our clients because of that shift within the landscape.
Jeff, I know you must have thoughts on the upfront.
Oh, I always have thought. So we do a calendar year upfront at Coke, so as we're kind of going through it. So we're still in the middle of it. Sarah, happy to take any advice you want to send our way on. It's a challenge this year, right? Because it's not just the impact of the linear shift into streaming. It's the entire shift that consumers have kind of seen as you've gone into it. But Sarah's right. The eyeballs are definitely accelerating and going there. The content is king. The question for a lot of us is like, how long are some of the eyeballs going to stay on all these platforms? An explosion of platforms have kind of happened, and we have to kind of figure out what is the right mix for us, depending on the brand. When you have a brand the size of Coke and you need more mass versus a brand that's smaller and you need a little bit more niche, you got to figure out how to balance the mass, to target it, the cross-platform measurement and everything. So we're in the thick of it. We're going to keep going as it kind of goes into it, but I definitely feel good about the approach that we're taking in terms of holding people accountable to certain key things that we all should, right? Deliveries, transparency, and understanding how it's going to improve our business and having a true measurement plan with people versus just placing a buy.
Yeah, let's talk about, some of those challenges, I think, in the OTT space. One of them, of course, being frequency. Jeff, you mentioned holding, sellers accountable for some of these things. Can you talk about some of the challenges that have previously, perhaps held some dollars back, and if those are changing or what some of the updates are there?
Yeah, so I think the challenges are for both the buyers and sellers, and fairness. And as it goes in there, the more we can provide insights and details on what we're kind of looking for, the better we can do it. The challenges on some of these other platforms is we need to kind of understand the unique reach, the unique frequency. We do not want to be overreaching a handful of households and underreaching a whole bunch of others. Things like wear out and wear in are not new concepts. They've kind of gone on to it. So we have to make sure that we kind of space that out and we're not hitting somebody 10, 15 times and hitting another person one. So that's what we're having a lot of conversations about with people, just to make sure that we're not just getting a report that says, hey, you had 1 million impressions. That doesn't do us any good. We have to make sure that we can be able to dive deeper and understand how, when you're running with these partners, it can actually move your business forward, how it can grow your brand love.
Great. I think we also have Charlie joining us. So there, wait, I see a circle. There he is. Hello, Charlie. You're here.
Hi there. So sorry.
It's okay.
Good to join.
Tech issues happen. We roll with it. It's been 8 months, and I think we're all sort of still trying to pass over these hurdles. But thank you for joining us. We were just talking about evaluating, OTT platforms, the challenges that exist. I do want you to weigh in on what Hershey's position has been as it relates to the streaming landscape. How are you evaluating the plethora of platforms that are out there right now?
Yeah, it really started for us looking at the landscape and saying, this is the place we got to look at if we're going to reach our consumers. So it's really following the shift that the consumer is making from traditional linear TV into the streaming space. Then once we started to see it became this, oh my gosh, there's so many ways to go about it. Not only are there different ways, different types of content that you can run your ads against, but then different ways of buying that. Even within one way of buying ads, you can buy it either through direct or programmatic. So really what we've had to do is kind of assess the landscape, look at a range of different partners and start trying out all the different ones to see which ones are working for the best for us and get in a little bit early so that it's for us, once we start to see the shift happening, we want to be ready with a few key partners so that we can lean into this successfully as the consumer shifts more. So that's really what we're looking at is what's going to be effective, what kind of price it's at, things like that.
I want to get back to that comment about getting in early, but I do want to ask how much of Hershey's budget you guys have been shifting into streaming, or just an approximation of, how much media spend is moving out of linear into OTT.
Yeah, I probably won't get back, but I'll say it's not, an insignificant amount. It's enough that, the impact that it's having on our at this point in time. We're really the pace of change is we're following the consumer. So you can imagine when COVID hit and even more, then it was like, hey, everything's telling us we have to shift even more into this space.
Right. So going back to how you're sort of looking at these platforms being the first one in, that kind of thought of getting in early so that maybe you also have not only are buying ad inventory on a platform, but also have a voice in sort of talking about how the ad model might shape up. We saw that, I guess, most famously right now with Quibi and the sponsorship model there. I'm curious from all three of you, sort of what you think of that model, and is it worth the risk to jump into some of these perhaps unproven platforms, invest, what is a significant amount of money to be in there first? Jeff, I'm gonna start with you on that.
Yeah, my 2 cents is while it will vary, for the most part, I don't see that as a place that we would have much interest in right now. There's a ton of risk with lack of guarantees. And when someone's asking you to make, tens of $1 million a commitment, you need a little bit behind that. So for us right now, it does make me nervous when you go in there and you're saying, hey, trust us, we're gonna get millions and millions of people. But again, they're not going to tell you how many people they're going to get. They're not going to tell you how often they're going to reach them. They're not going to tell you that. And I think that all of us are responsible for really taking care of all the resources that we have and generating the best possible results for it. And those gambles right now with all the other options that are out there, I don't think they're worth it. There's just too many other great options out there for us right now to connect with the consumer.
Charlie is circle again. We'll get back to him. But Sarah, do you think that there is something to be said about getting in, on the ground floor to help, build up some of these ad models?
I do. I think treading cautiously is always, the best way to go. Crawl, walk, run, if you will. In some cases, depending on the client, depending on the platform's offerings, the content that, the platform will have and all the evaluations that go into that, the potential scale, et cetera. I think there are times where you can take sort of that calculated risk on behalf of the client to bring a bigger than life moment and bring that awareness for whatever that main KPI is. I think a good example, and I think I'm going to be quoting the correct advertiser, but when Disney Plus launched, I think they did a big sponsorship with Verizon, giving a year away if you were a Verizon company to the platform. And that's a case where it's not an ad model, at least from, running inventory there for an advertiser, but it was a way that I think Verizon really brought a big idea to life and got awareness out, not only for their services, but obviously the Disney Plus service as well.
Let's talk about some of the different ad models that have emerged over the last couple of years. You have the pause ads, the binge ads, and a plethora of other ones. Jeff, are there any that are working really well, any that stand out, or what does, a brand like Coke really want from the streaming landscape as it relates to, how their ads are being served?
Yeah, I think it's going to vary by brand. And I think that's what you're kind of hearing from Sarah and I on here. Like the Hulu pause ad worked for us, particularly because when we think about who we are, the pause that refreshes, not watching consumers' natural habits of pausing an ad and looking at that as an opportunity to connect with them in a different way. We never want to get in somebody's face. So when you think about it and you're saying what's a non-intrusive way to connect with the consumer, there's different ways to do it. There's the pause ad. There's working with some of these people and integrating into shows in a very smart way. There's the idea of actually now when you pause to be able to complete it down to another e-commerce or some other purchase, right? Through things you wouldn't have thought come back, QR codes coming back big time. So there's a ton of different ideas out there. You just have to honestly just look at what the consumer's doing and say, well, what are they doing where it's an opportunity for us? There's nothing wrong with running, 15-second spots on some of these platforms, but the capabilities now with technology to take it a step further is what kind of separates it. And that's what we're kind of looking for, is how you can take it just that one step further.
Sarah, what are you thinking about as it relates to, the ad loads on some of these platforms, or just the way the ads are being served?
In the OTT space specifically, generally everything is non-skip. So, your audience is engaged. They're tuning into that content. Like Jeff said, I think the low-hanging fruit is sort of that interactive piece, getting that consumer and that viewer to engage with the content and, drive them to a call to action specifically for what you want them to do. And the QR code was something I was going to bring up as well. Like who knew that we were all going to be trying to include QR codes within our video ads these days, but really that's a direct implication of COVID, and viewers are used to now using them more so. So how can you do something interactive within your creative, within these platforms to drive them further down the funnel?
When you're talking about interactive ads, it's interesting. I feel like it's long been like the holy grail of TV advertising, this idea of interactivity. So far, we haven't really seen it prove out to the way that I think, brands want it to be or what the vision is. Jeff, is this maybe the time that we do see that? Or what do you make of this like holy grail of consumers actually engaging and taking an action based upon seeing an ad?
I think you're going to see a lot of renewed interest in trying to make it happen. I know that that's having the conversations on our side, is how do you actually create that additional experience? Again, I think the question is, how much do you need to invest to kind of go in and make it happen? And what is that experience that stays true to your brand? I'll actually say that I thought the GM stuff that they recently came out with in terms of taking some of those experiences was pretty darn good, right? So when I look at it, I think you're going to see more advertisers trying to have a little bit of fun with it. I think you're going to have advertisers trying to figure out how you can create some Easter eggs and stuff when somebody pauses or when somebody sees the ad as they're kind of going into it. So I think that you're going to see creative shops get a lot more involved, right? And I think that's going to be a lot of fun to kind of see where the ads kind of go.
So what does excite you right now in this space? What are some of the things that you're seeing that you think are really true advancements, or things that just feel right, from either the brand perspective or the client perspective? If Sarah, you want to start that one.
Sorry, the advancements.
What are some of the things that are just getting you excited for the space that, seem like new opportunities or opportunities that haven't existed before?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things for sure. The amount of streaming platforms is definitely something that I'm excited about, but keeping a very close eye on, because obviously there's a lot of options out there for our consumers, a lot of content out there. And so there's so many different ways that consumer can consume that content. So one, making sure that, we're staying ahead of the pulse on the opportunities and the streamers that are out there, and making sure that we narrow down the selection and optimize again, spending there for our clients the best that we can. I think too, as streaming and OTT is becoming, more of the norm today, it's a really great opportunity for us to reach our audience on a one-to-one level. So I think further audience targeting outside of just your typical, Nielsen demo, and really drilling down to, is this the person that is in my, core target audience, is really, I think, what we're going to see shift in our clients' spending within the area and how we're actually targeting them. And I think a lot of the streamers and the tech out there, are making it possible for us as advertisers to do that with them.
Jeff, you mentioned e-commerce before. I spoke earlier with NBCU and Peacock, talking about Peacock, and we're talking about shoppable ads. What do you make of those kinds of models, and how important will e-commerce play, do you think, in the streaming landscape?
For us, I think it's going to help us reach people that we haven't been able to do. There's moments when people are sitting on their couches right then and there, that in the past, we probably, if they didn't have our beverages in the house, we didn't have an opportunity. But now, whether it is partnering with one of our lovely food partners or someone like Uber Eats or even Amazon, where you can have it delivered instantaneously, you can have that Coke and movie night, get that popcorn and have it then. If you're working or watching a big game on ESPN or Disney or anything like that, and you have the ability to kind of motivate someone to order Domino's and bring it in, with a Coke, that's great. That's something that we probably didn't have before, with the ability to kind of order it. But it's opening up a whole bunch of interesting avenues that we're able to do. And then even if they're not watching and they're just doing a stock up, just to motivate them right now and have them try a new product. There's opportunities now to do sampling through some of these partnerships that you're able to educate someone right there and give them an opportunity to try a new product. That's great, and it's going to change the way we do a lot of things.
So over the last few months, we've seen major, media companies, Walt Disney, Viacom, CBS, NBCU, and others, reorganize themselves to put their streaming businesses sort of at the center of their organizations. I'm wondering what that means for advertising moving forward. What does that mean for who is sitting at the tables moving forward? Both from an agency side and a brand side, during your teams as a result. Maybe Sarah, if you have some thoughts.
Yeah, I think with these acquisitions, it first and foremost makes it easier for us to go to a partner kind of as a one-stop shop. You don't have to go to the several different lines of business that they have under their holding company. From an agency perspective, it's really not having the silos between, a TV buyer, a digital buyer, what have you. It's really being that holistic video buyer, and being able to, buy across screens, regardless of tactics. So that's something that Kara has been doing for quite some time, and it's just continuing to evolve as, again, you're not just a TV buyer anymore. You are that holistic video buyer.
Jeff, have you seen a change to who's sitting at the table?
A little bit, right? I think that what Sarah said is right. You're seeing that shift on the agency side. On the brand side, we're actually bringing in a lot of the digital platforms, people that are building some of this stuff. So from my team is set up to be that video neutral buyer and planner that Sarah just said. We're actually now bringing in the capabilities on our side as well to kind of understand how we can interact and take it a step further. So from our side, yes, we look at it from a video neutral standpoint as well. And we're working with the agency side, and then we're just trying to figure out how we can bring in certain little additional elements here and there to work with these platforms to take it a step further.
And before I let you guys go, Sarah, any prediction for 2021 on what might be the biggest changes or advancements in the space?
Let's see. I definitely think, again, that audience targeting and platform, not only platforms, but advertisers and clients alike, really bringing forth a lot of their targeting tactics and taking, advantage of testing and growing with a partner on sort of the tech that they have there from a data perspective.
Jeff, anything from you?
Similar. I think the measurement is going to be key. I think that's what you're going to see a big push of in 2021, whether it's through the IAB or other groups. I think that's what we're going to be going for. I don't think we'll get to true cross-platform measurement, but I do feel like we'll get a lot closer.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff and Sarah, and to Charlie, wherever you are. Appreciate you guys coming in and joining me this afternoon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Be well. Well, that's a wrap on our streaming conference. If there's one thing that's certain, takeaways from today, it's that streaming has gone from being the future of content consumption to one of the primary ways people are watching TV. You know, as we see all of these media brands, as I just alluded to, like Walt Disney and Warner Media and Viacom, CBS, and NBCU, restructure themselves to put their streaming businesses in the center of their operations, it's no longer enough for brands to simply be out there testing in streaming. And as we heard today, it's time for marketers to prioritize these platforms. And I'm sure in 2021, we will see much more of this to come. Thank you to all the panelists who took the time to be here and be a part of these conversations. And thank you to our presenting sponsor, SpotX, and our supporting sponsors, Criteo, Dish Media, Facebook, Gamut Total, LootMe, and The Trade Desk. Thank you to Ad Age's Garett Sloane for helping me in leading these panels. And as always, thank you to our Ad Age crew, Alfred Mascaroni, Anna Sakula, Max Sternlicht, and Elise Liffring for making this conversation and this event happen. Thank you for all for tuning in, and to stay tuned for our concluding event. We will hear from Ad Age President and Publisher Josh Golden and our sponsor, Facebook.
Thank you, Janine. Special thanks to you, Janine, and Garett for making this event so amazing. I loved hearing all the insights from today. And as we're heading into our last session, I want to thank you all for attending Ad Age Next streaming. I found this day really, really interesting and valuable. If I should mention, if you missed me earlier, I'm Josh Golden, the president and publisher for Ad Age, and we're going to cap off the event. I wanted to review the day and highlight some key themes with my friend Bo, who'll be joining me in just a second. We'll be talking about a little bit of the pandemic shift to OTT, addressability, measurability, measurement, and I want to have us all take away some specific themes that will inform what we should be doing tomorrow differently, potentially, as if tomorrow we're going to be different, and hopefully we'll be. It's clearly streaming is here to stay, and the evolution and the acceleration that we've seen has been extraordinary. Joining me, as I suggested, for our conversation is someone who knows a bit more about this space, is Bo Averill, product marketing director for brand and video for Facebook. Bo.
Yes, hi.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, very much. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for joining us today. Before I jump in to talk about today, do you mind just giving us a little framing on where you were and now your new role at Facebook, just so we can everyone have context for understanding the history that you bring to this role?
Absolutely. So I spent most of my career at Google and YouTube. I recently joined Facebook about 5 months ago, and I lead brand and video product marketing. And what that basically means is, my focus is helping to develop cross-family, so it's IG and Facebook solutions to bring to the market, so we can ensure advertisers can really maximize the value that they get from our platform, and also ensure that we're balancing the needs of our users and our creators and publishers as well.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I listened to today. I found it fascinating. Can we highlight some themes and touch on some insight where you can offer? Well, let's just start with this. Was there anything that surprised you?
Yeah, well, not too many big surprises coming from folks today. I think measurement and targeting and those themes continue to come up, and so you can see that the need from brands in the market continues there. And obviously, as a platform, we're really laser focused on that always, and ensuring that we can do that really well. I think macro level trends to touch on, right? That share shift continues that we see from traditional into more digital streaming services. What's really amazing is you've got about $30 billion that's going to shift in the marketplace overall, and most of that's going to come from TV and move into digital and video platforms. So just making sure that brands can keep up with that shift and be mindful about how they're investing to follow the shift. We also heard a lot about fragmentation and personalization. Fragmentation from a content perspective, there's more content than ever before. As a marketer, that means there's more challenges in getting in front of the right audiences at the right time. And so ensuring that you create a real personalized experience for the users you're looking to reach and the audiences you're looking to reach. And so that's something obviously that we
that's
kind of
let me dive in on that one just a teeny bit. So, knowing that personalization and relevance is obviously it's what's important. And we were mentioning just before, and I was watching the segment earlier on manga, and seeing that growth. It seems strange to me to have a whole plan to reach this audience that's passionate about this content area, but it seems like there's an actual audience for this. I'm just curious about, with personalization, obviously it's going to drive to very, very narrow audience segments. How does marketers take advantage of that?
Well, I think what's great and amazing about how the digital video landscape has evolved is that there is content now that can serve a plethora of different interests and passions and voices and communities. And so with that, of course, to your point, though, it's not just about being able to perhaps insert into these individual communities, but really how do you get to them at scale? And so how do you really have that personalization at scale? So while you have the individual communities that can flourish and thrive, and you really see a ton of engagement, even more so than any other media that happens there, as a marketer, you likely have to balance reaching those audiences individually with how do you get to them at scale.
Yeah, and when you think about the video formats that can support that, it certainly is. I mean, it's logical that you have obviously your television, but it cross connects back to the digital and mobile. So it's sort of this. It's more often than not, your linear experience is really linear, and it doesn't really, except if you're sort of driven online because you're interested in something. But I can see much more easily, like my behavior, for example. I'll out myself. I have YouTube TV. I cut the cable, and I tend to watch that on any platform, and that I don't really think about how I'm switching from platform to platform. But the ads are served and targeting me in particular.
Yeah. I think the personalization really follows the transition into mobile devices, which we know is now like the dominant way that we run our lives and we manage our content ecosystem. And so being able to, I think, to understand that these communities exist, being able to understand how to leverage them at scale, and using formats that are really going to be impactful, that invite a conversation. In the moments of greatest attention. I think the biggest shift that we've seen as a digital economy is attention spans, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, because of the personalization, which does allow us to have a more unique experience that keeps us engaged and is really more relevant for us. That also means that the moments that we're willing to invite an advertiser or a brand in for a conversation are fewer and far between. And so, being able to get to those communities with the right formats is key, right? And obviously, Facebook ecosystem. We've got a thriving and growing watch business now, which is in the traditional sense more of a way to use a sight, sound, and motion tried and true in-stream asset. With watch, for example, growing tremendously. It's 1.25 billion uniques now per month, up 70% year over year, 80% the year before that. So massive opportunity to kind of think a bit more traditionally around how you use the right asset in those moments. But then we've also seen the emergence of real new creative canvases that are really unique in stories and in feed. And so, having the right balance and understanding the right time to deliver those messages is something we think a lot about in the value that we're delivering back to the advertisers. Is how can we help guide them so that they can find the moments that matter and really connect in those moments meaningfully at scale.
That's fascinating. You mentioned ad innovation formats. It's something that was brought up a number of times. What do you think about the new formats? I mean, you think about how with streaming and connecting into streaming, and specifically with the AVOD and VOD, having the capacity of a special ad that gives you the ability to potentially skip an ad. It's an innovation format. How can marketers take advantage of the advancing platforms when specifically within streaming that are not necessarily available in every other platform?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important that you want to build for the places where you can really reach the majority of your audience and do it in a unique way, and use formats that allow you to tap into probably pre-existing tried and true success type formats like you probably would use on TV or with in-stream assets, but also make sure that you're following the audience as they're making those shifts, with new types of formats. So like I mentioned before, I mean, talking about stories or using a creative canvas to invite a customer in for a deeper conversation is really key. I think part of the connection for where we've heard a lot of trends today in discussion are how do you then move into a commerce experience? The idea of content to commerce and where are those connection points? Right now we're in a place where we can buy things immediately, and we expect to be able to do them immediately. That's why you see so much success with Amazon, and we've seen a lot of success, for example, on Instagram with shopping, and now that's extended into Facebook and opportunities to shop directly from the app and directly in the experience that you're having within the platform. And so I think for marketers, it's how do you use tried and true assets that deliver in the right places, like in-stream? How do you create new formats that allow you to have a deeper conversation when you're invited in places like feed and stories? And then how do you bring the path to purchase a lot more succinctly so that you really remove the number of steps it takes for your audience and your users and your consumers to really purchase your products, and then share them with friends so that everybody knows that they're products that users love.
I want to ask a question about content discovery. Before I do that, I want to quickly shout out some audience members that have been watching all day. And my production team has said these guys have been on and they want to be called out. So here comes Rick from New York, Louis from Argentina, Tho from Kenya, Catherine from Canada, Vintna from India, Jonathan from New York, and we also have Ethan, Derek, and Andrea. Thank you guys for watching today. One of the issues that I've been I've been facing. It's a smaller issue in my life. I don't have to go into detail here, but the truth is I don't know how to discover new things. And so content discovery was a topic that came up earlier. Yeah. There is no really obvious way to get a message out about a new streaming product, except right now there's articles I've noticed and word of mouth. So, how do we address this problem of content discovery?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the very issue that you're identifying is really the one that we're laser focused on trying to solve. And what we call it at Facebook is serendipitous discovery. And it's really almost like it's synonymous with effortless. Is the idea of having to find content to watch when you want to watch it is actually kind of stressful. It's like you're not quite sure what you want to watch. You may not be in the right moment, in the right mood to watch something that you may have had on your list, or you may not have the amount of time in that moment to watch what you may want to watch. Or hey, it may be something you promised your wife that you'll watch with her, and so you really can't watch it.
You can't watch that now, right?
Yeah, so we think about serendipitous discovery as understanding throughout the day, what's the right content at the right time that you may be interested in. And then once we start to get some signal and to learn from you what you're most excited about, what you're most interested in, what your friends are most interested in and excited about, we try to be more personalized in that approach so that you can tell us what you expect to see, and over time we can learn. And with that, just slowly being able to provide a more unique experience for each user. And have them be able to then discover, find, follow, comment, share, and then it becomes a process where we continue to fulfill content that's most exciting and relevant to you. Yeah. Because removing the stress from the equation actually helps a ton. And then once it's less effortless, then it becomes more a machine learning capability, right? Where we can take the discovery process away from you and allow you to find recommendations that are relevant in that moment.
I'll secretly tell you that I've been watching the Queen's Gambit, which I recommend very highly on Netflix. As we're leaving our conversation today in this event, Bo, tell me what are you streaming that you just love that you want everyone to know about? Because we're finding out about things.
I'm definitely a big Star Wars fan. My wife as well. So we've been definitely getting into The Mandalorian season 2.
Okay. Is it good?
It's great.
Okay, I've watched season 1, so Baby Yoda, you can't go wrong.
I love the Baby Yoda, can't get enough. I've got a 14-month-old, so my wife's waiting for the Baby Yoda stuffed animal so that we can bring that one home.
It's going to be the Christmas gift this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I'm on the go, I really love to watch TED Talks. I'm big into TED.
Oh,
lots of great ones. There's quite a few I can recommend, but I would say if you want to be educated and inspired and do it on the go right from your phone on Facebook, you can watch TED and enjoy.
Nice plug.
Thank you. A plethora of different episodes.
That's awesome. Bo, thank you so much. What a great wrap up. I really appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, Bo Averill, Product Marketing Director for Brand and Video for Facebook. Thank you so much, Bo, for joining us.
Great to be with you.
Thanks. I want to personally thank all the sponsors for helping make this event happen today and for the conference, as well as all the speakers. And of course, special thanks to all of you, our audience, for attending. That's all today for Ad Age, our event, Ad Age Next Streaming. Of course, you can check out more about news and information on adage.com, as well as this conference wrap up. And so you can share some critical bits on social if you'd like. Thank you all, and have a terrific rest of your day. Bye now.